Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's HackerKast. My name is Jeremiah Grossman. I am the founder of White Hat Security, and with me today is Robert Hansen out of Austin.
Hello.
And Matt Johansen, fresh back from Europe still, I guess, out in Houston. It's hot and no longer rainy, I guess.
Yes, it is. Ooh.
But actually, what I'm interested in is what your shirt says, Matt.
It's my user agent. Who doesn't put their user agent on their T-shirt?
I can't even remember the badge script. What does it do?
This is exploiting shell shock.
Oh damn! Yeah, why can't Google auto update with Matt's shirt?
Yeah, I mean one of my favorite shell shock exploits were exploit shell shock and patches shell shock. That's the best word ever.
All right, so lots going on today, every week in web security. The first story on the list that we get to talk about today, and here's what the headline reads: Encryption would not have helped at OPM, says DHS officials. So big gobbledygook there. So everybody remembers the still ongoing OPM breach that they said came from China. And, of course, their data is not encrypted. So everybody said, well, why wasn't it encrypted? And I think a bunch of the experts say, yeah, it probably should have been encrypted, but no, it probably wouldn't have helped, and they kind of confirmed that. And it's not, and the reason we kept this story is not so much that about this one instance, but people get confused about the value of encryption, I think, all over the place. Yes, passwords should be crypted or hashed, but if you're going to lose your account credentials or give them up in a phishing scam, like it looks like the case in the OPM breach, well, the user had to be able to get access to the data, which means the application that they're using would have unencrypted it. So what's the encryption really buying you? So I'll ask you guys, if your database or your data file stores are encrypted, under what scenarios does that protect you?
Yeah, it really doesn't, and that's kind of why things like S3's encryption, it's nice and everything, and it meets some compliance checkbox, but it really doesn't do what people think it does. But what I would say that would have helped is if they had something that can query like a database access layer and only respond with data related to that particular user. So if they had been able to break in, great, but they'd only been able to get whatever that person had access to, and then ideally try to detect when people are making like hundreds of millions of queries. If they're making like all these queries, you probably should have some sort of knowledge of that occurring. So
access control, but not necessarily encryption.
Right. Yeah. Definitely not.
So I mean, best I could tell when people ask for database encryption, what does that really get you?
Yeah, I mean, it's really about losing your computer. If the
physical theft.
If it physically gets stolen, and that makes a lot of sense with laptops or mobile devices or even stuff in people's houses. But
yeah, it's host level stuff. If the host level is compromised, and it's not secret injection. It's not like, hey, okay, get to this the same way the application does, right? If it's a one layer down, it protects against that.
Yeah.
So I guess that's everybody, yes, encrypt your stuff. Encrypt it, before you go about database encryption, let's get some SSL going across the web. That would be really good.
Oh, they're working on it. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. A lot of Fs, but they're working on it.
I think Reddit just announced that they're going whole site HTTPS this week. So
yeah,
that's awesome.
Slowly but surely.
So let's move on to the next story here. A company called SourcePoint. I'll just read the headline because Robert, I know, is just salivating over this one. Former Google exec launches SourcePoint to stop ad blockers. Yes, you heard that correct. So, Robert, what's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, it's the title is a little bit misleading because they're doing a lot more stuff than that. So how they really got their start was more on the detecting when people ads are being modified. So there's a lot of companies out there, let's say the providers, the ISPs out there of the world, that will basically rewrite ads. And so people who run those, let's call it like a media company, like a CNN or something, they would not be able to get the revenue associated with the ad impression because the ad isn't there anymore, right? It's somebody else's ad. So that was their original modus operandi, but gradually they realized they could change and actually pivot very slightly and say, do we see these things being removed in the DOM? And if so, can we, alert user, hey, this is how we make our money or whatever, and that's how they're potentially going to be monetizing it on their behalf of whatever their clients are. In this case, like the media providers, CNNs of the world, the AT&Ts, media like whatever, CBS or ABC or whatever, that kind of company.
So I'm wondering about the implementation of this. Okay, let's say this model works. I mean, if a site I really like that's ad supported, and that's I have to accept a few non-invasive ads that don't dance around the screen, yeah, I probably do that. But how are they going to practically implement it in the browser? That's going to be tricky without a plugin.
Well, it can be a plugin, at least to detect when it's happening. Like we see this happening on these particular websites. So that can help them with like lead generation, as an example. Like say, okay, we're seeing this occur a lot on these particular websites or these particular brands or these particular advertisers or whatever. And then they can use that sort of as a lead gen tool. But really, you're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, ultimately, no one's going to install that thing if it's no one will install that, not intentionally anyway. That's the big intentionally. But what they would do is run whatever JavaScript is running on the browser, because everybody runs everything their browser presents to them. So yeah, it's going to have to be DOM-based stuff. It's going to have to be JavaScript, some sort of active content.
So you're going to go to these news pages and they're going to say, please, please, please turn off your ad blocking because this is how we make money? Is that pretty much how it works, and there's going to be a little dialogue?
Yeah, I think that is the idea.
So it's going to be kind of interesting in the cat and mouse game because, imagine the user's in control of the DOM. So I could fake out the security and say the ad really showed, but just make it invisible, change its opacity or something like that.
That's right. Yep. Yeah. I don't think that there's a solution per se. But if you think about it from the publisher's perspective, the advertiser, who's I guess publisher in this case, from their perspective, they don't really care because they still got the ad impression. If it gets pulled and it fools them, they don't really care.
I think this is a technologically flawed model.
Yeah, we'll see.
And also I'm thinking, okay, it's still serving up ads, so why isn't AdBlock or AdBlock Plus just going to block all the domains that, what's the company's name? SourcePoint has.
Yeah.
Like if you're installing it and it's doing it in the DOM, will they be able to, is it a race condition? Because they're both kind of working in the DOM at that point.
Yes, it is. And if you really think about what's going on, SourcePoint will actually have an easier time updating than AdBlock would, because AdBlock can't really completely change the way they function at any given moment. They have to kind of rewrite this control, and they're always going to lose the race, but they can catch up, right? They lose for a while, but then they catch up, and then SourcePoint changes again. Sure. What they'll end up probably having to do is use lots and lots and lots of URLs, or use URLs that you can't block, like Amazon or something.
As we talked about last week, just do stuff locally. Go superfish on it.
Are we entering like this the AV, the virus antivirus game, where the ad guys are the viruses and the AV is AdBlock Plus? It feels like the same thing.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly right. You're absolutely right. And if you think about it, that's exactly how viruses get onto computers in the first place. They have the exact same. In fact, not to put too fine a point on it, but these are the same people. The same ones installing toolbars, and it's the same group.
So speaking of this cat and mouse game, then we got the other end where we got this other story Robert's going to cover on AdBlock Plus rolls out mass deployment for IT administrators. So mass deployment of AV, mass deployment of ad blockers. So what's this feature?
Yeah, to me this seems a little silly, and also no one should be using AdBlock Plus anyway because they let ads through. But yeah, there's other. This is basically a shortcut because frankly, a lot of people use stuff like Firefox, which doesn't really have the same sort of enterprise controls that like an Internet Explorer has. So it's a little hard to roll out like snapshots to an enterprise. But in this case, they're trying to make it sort of fix browsers inability to do this. Like Chrome also doesn't have this feature. Fix the browsers so that you naturally get this feature, this enterprise feature, so they get it everywhere. And if you think about it from AdBlock Plus's perspective, their stick to force advertisers to pay to get whitelisted gets stronger the more people use it. So they really have a lot of incentive to get it in as many computers as they possibly can.
Yep.
Yeah, AdBlock wants to pay the piper. Come on, guys. There's so many other options. The plus does not mean better.
All right, so we talked a lot about ads and ad blocking. Let's go to a closely related one, a story about NSA reverse engineering AV. But before we get to the current events, I kind of got on this shtick a while back when I had a conversation at Black Hat with Dave Vitale, who is the CEO of Immunity. He was talking to me about this pen test he did a while back. It was just against a hardened target. They first did all the threat model because part of the pen test was they couldn't get caught. That was part of the exercise. And they felt during the pen test that the best and easiest path in was to actually exploit the spam filtering server on the mail server. So what they did is they crafted a special email that when they sent it in, it would get, I guess, parsed by the anti-spam parser, and then they would, anti-spam, AV parser in that thing, and it would exploit the mail server, and that's how they rooted the system. So they rooted the system, and they won the exercise specifically because of the security product. I thought that was pretty interesting. Now over the past several years, as bad guys shift from one layer of attack to the next, it used to be host level Windows machines, then it moved to browsers. And I was wondering, when browsers get secure enough, where do they move? And I just had the sneaky suspicion that if you're going to attack a system, attack the AV itself, because where the source of insecurity is the parsing of random files on the internet. And what parses more random files than an antivirus product, which has root? It's like a rootkit on the device. And so it's like, okay, and if you ask many, many experts these days, security pros, most, I would say most, but a lot, simply don't run antivirus. They just don't do it because it increases attack surface. And then over the last couple of years, we've seen more researchers find whole bunches of vulnerabilities in AV products across the gamut, and their conclusion was that their software isn't written terribly well, and it actually increases the attack surface. So that's the background of this story. So today's story is apparently one of the new Snowden docs that have been released has a program that NSA was running that has specifically targeted certain AV companies, particularly Kaspersky, to reverse engineer their AV software in order to track and hack other users. So I guess the prediction is coming true.
Absolutely. I mean, I've done a lot of stuff for previous companies in a consulting role back in the day, and I totally found it to be true. Every single security product we looked at was completely riddled with holes. So this is not at all surprising. And the NSA is always going to go after the best choke point possible, and antivirus does a lot of weird stuff in the browser. Like, first of all, it phones home all the time to get auto updates. So that's right there. That's if you get in a man in the middle between Kaspersky's internet connection and the world, you're going to see every single person updating and which version they're updating to, and you can sort of track them that way. And then also antivirus does another weird thing. That you were right about the parsing thing. Like, I've seen antivirus quite a few times will change the gzip deflate encoding header and get rid of it, or change it to something else, specifically so that the server won't send a gzip deflate encoded response, because that adds a lot of processing power on their side. But it also hugely increases the bandwidth usage, which is not great. And also changes the intention of the user in potentially very dangerous, weird ways. So I am not at all surprised by this. I think you're right. It's been a long time coming. I've heard you made that prediction before. I totally see why they do it.
Well, my question is why what I really want all these headlines to change to, because everyone it's saying, oh, NSA is tracking users of antivirus by reverse engineering the antivirus software. Like, just call it what it is. They're hacking you. Like, we call hacking if someone leaves their Facebook open, but we can't call this hacking. Like, they are hacking Like, they're hacking into your stuff and watching what you're doing. Period. Like, via a program that you install.
Yeah,
So
I mean, you bring up a good point. I mean, they should file a DMCA.
good luck with that. But it's kind of a weird position that the AV industry finds itself in. And one is there's a credibility crisis in InfoSec. I mean, imagine, InfoSec already has a pretty big credibility crisis out there. But the other one is, imagine if people are paying money to be less secure because they're running AV. I mean, that's, or maybe the AV industry is going to get software security religion and start down the path just like Microsoft did, eons ago at this point. But here's an interesting question. I was just thinking about it. So you have AV and you got ad blocking. If you looked at the security people in the industry, do you think by percentage, more people are running AV or more people are running ad blocking?
Oh, that's a good question, Jared. I don't know. Do you mean in corporate environments or on their personal computers? Because I think the answer would be different.
Both. I mean, both.
I think the corporate environment, they're almost all going to be running AV because they kind of have to. But yeah, on their home computer, I bet you the vast majority of them are running AdBlock, but not some sort of AdBlock, but not antivirus. That would be my guess anyway.
I don't know. If you're using Windows at home, I almost assume that they are at least using some free antivirus software, AVG or Avast or Microsoft Security Essentials or something like that, right? Or
Yeah, but I wouldn't call
this they got in the mail and.
But I wouldn't call Security Essentials traditional AV. I see what you're saying, and that's absolutely a true statement. But I wouldn't count that because it's sort of auto built in. I mean, it would actually be work to turn it off, and why not use it since it's already there? But yeah, I mean, if you're talking about AVG or whatever, I would tend to believe that most security guys aren't running it, especially on Macs.
Yeah, are we talking just security people? Was that the question?
Yeah, it was just the security industry, the pros, the experts, the ones that are supposed to know this.
Okay, if it's just the pros, I'm going with AdBlock has a higher percentage.
Yeah,
I think so. Because exactly like you said, Mac usage has gone through the roof in our industry specifically. Every time you see a conference speaker up there.
So prediction time. In roughly what time frame are we going to see the first, I guess, major, mass spread worm, an actual virus or whatever worm that it spreads because of AV?
Well, here it is, right now.
No, that's just targeted. NSA is targeted. They're not. I'm talking like mass consumer, where it's going to snare 100,000 users or something. Is that going to be this year, 2015, 2016, longer?
Well, I think it would be not a great move to do that. Is the reason I think it may not happen, or at least not quickly, or rather, it should happen as soon as possible because I don't know what the growth rate looks like, but I have to imagine it's kind of petering out now. I mean, the amount of individual consumers who have it is definitely petering out. In fact, it's been petering out for years, from what I remember. But the ecosystem is still tiny. I mean, the amount of people who've got antivirus is still tiny compared to ones who don't.
I'll say that'll happen once routers are secure. And once you can't worm home routers anymore, then no target.
I mean, if you can only compromise a couple of million people, I mean, that's still good, but it's still that's a fairly small, big botnet, or you know what I mean? Like. It's not like taking out something in IIS or something, which or Apache or something, like get a huge chunk of the internet that way.
Okay, so let's move from that and talk about yet another virus propagator, and that's called Flash, and how it involves Brian Krebs. So Matt, what's going on with this story?
Yeah, so initially I just kind of tossed this in the pile because it was kind of funny to see Krebs write a story about his 30 days without Flash. He finally got sick of it. And there's a big edit at the top of his story that kind of overshadowed his own story, but also kind of drove the point home, which was as he was editing this post at the end of his 30 days, Adobe just released today, an out-of-band fix for a Flash 0-day. So I guess he was wise to go this route, right? And he also gives a shout out to Click to Play, which I know we are all big fans of click-to-play. Don't run Flash by default, which is just an easy setting in Chrome and Firefox. So this Flash 0 day comes to us via FireEye. So, of course, there's a really stupid name on top of it, which was, what was it? Operation Clandestine Fox?
Wolf.
You got to give them credit for great marketing over at Operation Clandestine Wolf. That's awesome.
Yeah, Clandestine Wolf or Fox or, oh no, yeah, Fox was a previous blog post. This is Wolf. I don't know. Whatever. Okay. So I guess they were monitoring this group in China, and they called this APT3, which I guess this is a different group than APTs 1 and 2, or maybe they combined, who knows. Yeah, this was in Singapore. There was a phishing campaign targeting a bunch of different organizations in aerospace and defense, construction, engineering, high-tech, telecom, and transportation. And yeah, it was just using this Flash 0 day, which is now patched. But if you're interested in seeing the phishing emails that are using this or the exploit details, I'll put it in the blog post.
Well, to correct it, the patch is available. It's not patched.
It's not patched. That's true. It's not patched. It's out. Yeah.
How come Flash? I always get those dialogues in the browser. Please update Flash now, like for the 4th time this month. Why don't they just do silent auto update? Like
they do in Chrome now. Flash is bundled into Chrome now, and so it's part of the silent updating.
So I guess they're moving in that direction. That's good.
I think that's part of PPAPI, though, which is Google's implementation of Flash, which is technically not the same thing. It's very, very close, but slightly different implementation. But you're absolutely right. It's bizarre. In fact, it's almost weird that the operating system manufacturers don't force updates to go through their update mechanisms, so you don't have to rethink how to do updates. You just use theirs, and if it doesn't work in theirs, it doesn't work.
Yeah, it's clearly too hard for the average person to keep Flash updated, in Java for that matter. It's just far too hard. It's either get rid of it or make it silent auto update.
How about get rid of it? Let's just get rid of it.
Listen,
all
if
right.
HTML can do it, why do we need a plugin, right?
That's right.
All right, so it wouldn't be a day of the week unless Google was caught up in some privacy issue. So, Robert, something to do with the Chrome or Chromium and Google spying on audio. So what's going on here?
Yeah, so this has to do with the thing that they're saying, like "Hi Google" or whatever, and whenever you say "Hi Google," Google the browser will, or your phone or whatever, will start listening to you and wait for you to do something. So effectively, the idea is that they're going to be listening to you all the time and sending that back to their servers. But they double promise, triple promise that they're not going to actually log any of that stuff. They're just waiting for you to say the words "Hi Google," and then once you say "Hi Google," then something will happen. And they haven't actually turned on that feature yet. But technically the code is sitting there in Chromium and ready to go in Chrome apparently.
I think they turned it on in Debian and Chromium. I think users of Debian, Chromium, they're listening already.
Yeah, great group to start with, by the way. Exactly the kind of people who are going to look into that.
The part I get to reconcile this for me. So they're not going to log it, but they want to collect it.
Yeah, they want to collect it. The idea that don't get me wrong. There's all kinds of problems with this, but the idea was they'll send all this information to themselves and process it, and constantly be looking for the words "Hi Google" or whatever. And then once they hear that, then they can. They
can't do that locally. Well, they have to send it to their servers to detect "Hi Google."
Look, Jer. The second part is they might be able to do parts of it locally, but then eventually what they really need to do is send whatever you just said, say, "Hi Google, go do something for me." That all needs to get sent to their server, so that's really what they're processing it. But yeah, I mean, all your concerns are absolutely valid. I mean, really, do you want your browser sitting there constantly listening to you? I can't imagine a worse thing. I mean, it's just like there's almost nothing worse. I mean, other than turning on the camera, waiting for me to wave at it to do something.
I guess this means this is going to happen. Google is going to do this. There's too much power here for them. They are doing it. They're going to do. They're going to do more of it. And this is exactly what Apple is speaking out against. It's you have an ad company who makes money tracking people versus another company like Apple who doesn't have that business model. So there's going to be this constant push by Google to collect more and more of our personal information persistently and all the time. There's just no way around it.
Yeah, this is like the Apple Watch, same thing. If you say hi Siri or something like that, or hey Siri, whatever it is, so it's always listening. But Apple, makes products and sells them, and that's how they make money. Whereas Google, sells you. So.
And the other thing is they're less than comfortable relationship with the government. I mean, it doesn't even really matter if it's our government or somebody else's government or whatever, because if you're traveling overseas and you got this thing installed and you're traveling over transatlantic lines and using SSL, I mean that you're relying on all of your privacy and security is based on some technology that has bugs in it constantly, and then you're relying on them not to just hand over the information when they get subpoenaed or warrant for the information. This is a terrible design.
But imagine if you're the government and maybe you not have a cozy relationship with Google. I mean, imagine you have an audio tap on 100 million people or 1 billion people, however many users Chrome has. I mean, you don't need a phone tap. I mean, basically you have a listening device that's in front of the person. You just turn it on.
Yep.
I mean that's like gold to them.
Yeah, it is gold, and really it's designed so poorly. Like I always tell people, if you don't want to have the government all up in your stuff, don't log anything to begin with. Just don't log anything, and then you don't have to worry about it. And this is like the antithesis of this. They're logging everything. They're logging as much as they possibly can.
But important distinction here, right? So you said, okay, they have this thing and they could just turn it on. Well, they already have that. They already have your cell phone and your computer microphone that if they wanted to hack in like they're doing through antivirus right now and turn it on, they can do that, and we can't do anything about it. The difference here is that we already have those nice pretty diagrams from the Snowden documents of how the NSA is stripping SSL at the Google layer, right, and being able to read all of that information. Now they just need to watch because it's already happening. Even if it's not being logged, if they're stripping SSL, if SSL is even being used here, they can just collect it man-in-the-middle style without turning the microphone on because it's already being turned on for some legitimate purpose, right? Yep. There's a major difference here.
Yep.
Yeah, this is crazy stuff. But I guess kudos to the Debian community for being all over this one. Both from an open source angle, a privacy angle. I mean, this is like somebody was really doing their homework on this one. That's kind of cool.
Yep.
That's the other major problem, right? They didn't say, hey, would you like this? We're about to do this. You can opt out. Or whatever it is. It's just
they don't even have an opt out. There's no button you can click to turn this off.
Opt in, whatever. It just silently kind of slipped into an update.
If you ever actually go through the process of deleting Chrome on Windows and then reinstall Chrome, the install looks different the second time. It's much, much easier, which means they have components that sit there and continue to be on your computer long after you've deleted them. Make the process of downloading and installing much, much, much easier the second time around. So yeah, you cannot trust that browser at all. It's very scary.
We all take off our tinfoil anti-Chrome hats and use this podcast via Google Plus, which will say up in this corner.
We will let them log the things we want them to log. And I guess with that, we should probably wrap this up before it devolves even worse. But thanks, everybody, for listening to another podcast. If you like what we're doing here, please rate, please subscribe, and tell us what you think. Thank you very much.
See ya.
Thanks, guys.